Amtrak and passenger rail provide an extremely vital service to the transportation net in the greatest country in the world, especially the Northeast Corridor. And most Americans don't know it. Most Americans don't understand it. The Northeast Corridor is the home of 1 out of every 6 Americans, of all the population of America. 1 out of 6 lives along the Northeast Corridor. It's home of 1 out of 5 every 5 jobs that exist in America. It's home of 1/3 of the Fortune 500 companies right along the Northeast Corridor. 6 out of the top 10 research universities in the world are along the Northeast Corridor. 6 out of the world's top 10 largest financial institutions are along the Northeast Corridor. And they all depend, and their productivity is impacted by the existence of Amtrak, which owns 363 miles of the 457 miles of track along the corridor. Why do I mention that? In 2013, and Anthony referenced total Amtrak passengers, just on the Northeast Corridor, 11 million passengers traveled the Northeast Regional and Acela Express combined. A record $1.1 billion in ticket revenue. It's hard to imagine what life would be along the corridor without Amtrak. It is not hyperbole to suggest I-95 would be a parking lot. No, seriously, I won't go into all the statistics. $20 million a linear mile of congested highway on the Northeast Corridor. Compare that to what we spend on a mile of track. Amtrak is a critical artery supporting the country's growth and commerce. Let me give you a few other statistics, because I'm so tired of getting beat up on this for the last 40 years by my colleagues who don't know any better. About 50% of the worst highway bottlenecks in the country are along the Northeast Corridor, 50%. Folks, along those corridors, individuals in those bottleneck corridors spend an average of 47 hours a year just sitting still in traffic. The result is a total of more than $51 billion in lost productivity. This is a fact. It's an economic fact. $51 billion in productivity lost because they're sitting behind a wheel in a traffic jam averaging 47 hours a year doing nothing. Let's take a look at another piece of the transportation map. New York and Philadelphia together are responsible for nearly half of all the flight delays in the United States. There's not a whole lot more traffic allowed up top there. It's been saturated. That's even less productivity. Amtrak carries 3 passengers for every 1 airline passenger carried in the region between Washington and New York. Amtrak carries more passengers between New York and Boston than all the airlines combined. Amtrak is on time 83% of the time in the Northeast Corridor compared to the airlines, which are about 15%. Don't get me wrong, we need the airlines. We need to modernize our airports. We need to modernize our highways, our ports, and our canals. But we also need to significantly modernize Amtrak, not just in the corridor, but nationally. Another myth I'd like to put to rest. Amtrak covers almost 80% of the operating cost of every single ticket that is purchased. Amtrak does, okay? So you talk about, wow, Amtrak's so subsidized. Let's put this in perspective. Unlike other parts of the transportation system, Amtrak and freight railroad provide their own traffic control, their own police, their own security, their own signals. Yet roughly half of every airline ticket that you buy is subsidized by taxpayers. 50%, almost 50%. It's not a bad thing, but let's put this in perspective. When I'm told about Biden, you're Amtrak, you are overly subsidized, make it run on its own. Over half the cost of riding on an interstate highway system is covered by taxpayers, not the gasoline tax. And one more little, as they used to say years ago on CNN, one more little factoid, as they used to say. There are 160 of the smallest cities in America with remote airports that not a single airline would think of flying into unless the American taxpayers made a direct payment of $250 million, $250 million a year, to pay for the airline to fly to Bemidji, Minnesota, or to fly to a number of places I could name. That's not wrong. They should have air travel. But the last thing I need from a guy from Bemidji is telling me why are we subsidizing a railroad and the busiest corridor in the world. We should do it. But folks, let me tell you the rest of the story. Amtrak supports 500 destinations around this country. And keep one thing in mind. Our nation's population is expected to grow by 17 million more people between now and 2020. How many more lanes can you build? At what cost? How many more air traffic routes are there from the major airports? How many more berths are available at our nation's airports? We need an entire transportation system to accommodate the growing economy and the new high-tech economy that America is becoming. We need one that's more efficient as we deal with the threats of global warming as well. That means improving fuel efficiency in vehicles, which I'm proud to say President Obama has done by doubling mileage, which everyone went nuts about, but now every automobile manufacturer is acknowledging it was a great thing to do. By the way, we're producing the best product in the world in terms of the automobiles we're building today. It means look at all the effort being made by Boeing and others to develop fuel-efficient engines. They're doing great work on it. Great work. But it also means more energy-efficient locomotives and trains than we see today. Again, a couple of stats. Amtrak trains are 17% more efficient, energy efficient, than air travel, and 37% more efficient than automobile travel. That matters. It matters to you generation of students. It matters in terms of global warming. It matters in terms of the atmosphere. And it also means saving tens of millions of gallons of fuel every single year. And by the way, and as an aside, the energy epicenter of the world by 2030 will be North America. It will not be Saudi Arabia, it will be North America. We produce more gas and oil than any other country in the world, and we will be energy independent by 2031, and North America will be energy independent by the mid-2020s. So again, we need all modes of transportation. We need to modernize it in order to compete. And I mean this, a lot of you have traveled, or I've traveled 800,000 miles just since being vice president. And I've traveled millions of miles around the world. I've been in almost every country in the world. If I blindfolded someone and took him at 2 o'clock in the morning into the airport in Hong Kong and said, "Where do you think you are?" they'd say, "This must be America. It's a modern airport." If I took you in blindfold and you took you to the LaGuardia Airport in New York, you must think I must be in some third world country. No, I'm not joking. Why did we lead the world economically for so long? We had the most modern infrastructure in the world. Why do businesses decide to locate in a particular geographic area? A transportation. Now that's why we have to continue to dredge the Delaware River. That's why we have to widen the port. That's why the Panamax ships that are 160 feet wide, 230 feet tall, and need a 50-foot draft have to be accommodated in every port in the East Coast. Because businesses go where they can get their product to market the cheapest and fastest way they can. According to the World Economic Forum, just in the last decade, the United States has fallen 20 spots when it comes to the quality of infrastructure in America. It's embarrassing, and it's stupid. It's stupid. It puts us literally behind, they rank us behind Barbados. Great country. One airport. Look, folks, not a joke. We need to reinvest and modernize our whole infrastructure, especially in rail, which plays such an essential part of our infrastructure system. That's why when the President gave me the responsibility of running the Recovery Act, everybody thinks more money came to Philly and Pennsylvania because of me. It was only because you're the more qualified. I just want you to know. That, okay? But all kidding aside, here's what we did. That act 5 years ago, we invested $48 billion in infrastructure. And by the way, I might note, every independent agency, including a committee run by a leading Republican from California who's not a big fan of ours, after almost 6 months of investigation, acknowledged the Recovery Act was the best run federal government program he's ever seen. Less than 1% waste, fraud, or abuse in the system. Now here's the point though. The only reason I say that is we know how to do this. That $48 billion in infrastructure was the largest public works project in American history since President Eisenhower in the interstate highway system. It generated another 75 in private investment in economic activity. We improved over 6,000 miles of rail, more than 350,000 miles of road, 20,000 American bridges were replaced, but it just scratched the surface. And they started to bring our railroads into the 21st century. Amtrak was able to repair and rebuild its own infrastructure, completing more than 150 different projects in 400 locations. You know all the Keystone Corridor we're talking about now, linking Harrisburg and Philly? Well, with the help of Allison Swartz, starting with this guy behind us here, with the help of Shaka, Allison Swartz, Bobby Brady, my old friend, and he was one of my closest friends, as you know, Arlen Spector, Amtrak improved the existing rail line to make service faster. There was a significant investment in the rail system. The bed, shaving off 5 to 10 minutes off the travel time is a big deal. It leads to a tipping point where riding the train is a better option than driving. Helping folks save at the pump, reducing our dependence on foreign oil. That's what's happened since. Look what's happened since. Ridership in the Keystone Corridor grew more than 50% in the last 6 years. Last year, a record 1.47 million passengers traveled along that corridor alone. How many more lanes of highway do you need? There's not that many direct routes. I've traveled it a lot in an automobile. And speaking to myself personally, I'm looking forward to the day when I can travel on a high-speed rail the way folks do in Asia and Europe. We have the technology. I can't imagine an America 15 years, let alone 30 years from now, without high-speed rail. I mean rail that goes 225 to 230 miles an hour. We've got 9 high-population corridors that we've demonstrated and proven can absorb all the ridership that is needed. Those corridors exist. The capacity is there. What are we waiting for? It would revolutionize the way we think and do business. It would increase productivity. It would do so much more for the economy and all those jobs it would provide. Folks, that's what smart infrastructure means. Safer, faster, more reliable service, supporting a stronger economy, and providing hundreds of thousands of jobs. If we just move forward on the $500 million proposal we have just now, it's tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. Not just the guy and the woman laying track or the bed, but the engineer, the surveyor, the people making $170,000 a year to people making $150,000 a year. It's the place where we can put more people to work than anything else, and brings us here today. The average Amtrak locomotive in the regional rail system has not been replaced for 20 to 30 years. The average locomotive has over 3.5 million miles on it. Until now, Amtrak revenues and funding have not been allowed to invest in capital improvement the way they should. So after Amtrak restructured itself, which under the leadership of many here, including Joe Boardman, after it restructured itself with Ray LaHood, it qualified to apply for critical government loans to help capital investment for the new next generation locomotives. And that was just 2 years ago. Today, with Anthony Fox, he touted these new locomotives that are already underway now. Because of that loan, they're available and they're able to be paid for. They'll reduce maintenance costs, improve service reliability, more energy efficient, and actually put more energy back into the catenary. Siemens used this adaptive braking technology to reduce consumption of energy, a savings estimated to be just that alone, the new brake system, $300 million over the next 20 years for Amtrak. And that's all good for Amtrak, but it's good for passengers, but it's also good for America, and good for American manufacturing, and good for our economy. These state-of-the-art locomotives were assembled at a Siemens facility in Sacramento, California, employing 800 people, making a good paying wage. They used parts from 69 suppliers in 23 states, including states along the corridor. The locomotive brakes were crafted in Baltimore. The paint was mixed in Wilmington, Delaware. The handrails were made with pride right here in Philadephia. The electricians in Middletown made the electric components. Seats from Exton. Cab signing came from East Pittsburgh. Installation from Newark. The basic plastic parts from New York. Lighting from New Haven. Rubber parts from Boston. This is like it used to be, folks. This is how we used to grow America. With good paying American jobs. Middle class jobs. Jobs you can, and middle class is not a number. It's not whether it's 50,100 or 51,900. It's being able to own your home and not rent it. Being able to send your kid to a park where they can play safely. Being able to send them to school. If they do well, they can go to college. If they go to college, you can afford to get them there. And maybe in the meantime, take care of your parents and pray to God you don't have to have your children ever take care of you. That's what middle class is. But those jobs are shrinking. The middle class is shrinking. Income inequity has to be addressed. And it's only addressed by a good job. $40,000 a year. Locomotive engineers make about $55,000 on average. Civil engineers make about $84,000 on average. And they're the folks building on the foundation we're laying since day one, investing in our workers who are literally laying tracks to the future economic prosperity. So folks, this locomotive I just went through represents a heck of a lot more than just getting from point A to point B. We're doing something big. American ingenuity is making things possible and creating opportunities for all of us. You know, the world knows America's coming back stronger than ever before. The United States of America, because of who we are, is better positioned than any nation in the world to lead the world in the 21st century economically, not because of Barack and Joe Biden, because of the American people. We are better positioned than any nation in the world. And it's time to seize that opportunity. I used to be talked about as the young idealistic guy who was optimistic, and they now write about me as the White House optimist, as if I'm the guy, as my grandpa from Scranton would say, who just fell off the turnip truck yesterday. I've been there longer than all of them, but I guarantee you there's a total justification for my incredible optimism about this country. It's time. It's time to move. And a critical part of moving is the infrastructure. And a critical part of the transportation infrastructure is rail. And a critical part and the part of rail that is passenger rail is Amtrak. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep coming. We're going to keep moving. Amtrak is on the move. And Amtrak is going to be one of the vehicles that drags the American economy along into the 21st century. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thanks an awful lot.